I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
Did you ever have a friend who, every time you spent time with them, later on you ended up kind of feeling bad about yourself? And maybe they always said things like, I really love you. But every time you were with them, they would say something that would kind of hurt your feelings. And sometimes you would just dismiss it, but you never knew why. You always felt bad after spending time with them. Well, your friend or your family member, they're toxic. They're toxic people. And it's not like friendships should always make you feel like unicorns and butterflies, because sometimes friendships go through changes. But for the most part, your friends are there because they make you feel good. You feel good about them, they feel good about you, you feel good about their accomplishments, they congratulate yours. But if you have someone who is always, you know, finding some fault with what you did, what you said, if you come to them with a promotion, they will make sure that they pour cold water on whatever it is to make you doubt yourself. And a lot of us have had that happen. And it takes a while. Sometimes it takes us years before we realize, you know what? I need to cut that person off. And so today we're going to talk about freeing yourself from people. And I always say this because this word was not around when I was younger and had these people in my life. And that word is frenemy. And the word didn't exist until a few decades ago, but it really kind of captures what these people are. They're friends, but they're enemies because they're not really good for you. And so, sisters, think about all the people in our lives who've kind of made us feel bad about ourselves that we've hung on to and then thought later on, I really don't need this person in my life. But it's not hard because a lot of times what we do, because we've invested, decades into this friendship, we excuse a lot. And really, people, life's too short. We don't have to be around people who make us feel bad about ourselves. So, what are some of your thoughts, and how do we get rid of these people? Do we just walk away? Do we ghost them? Another thing that used to not be a thing, even though it was a thing. But I don't know. I can think of at least one person that I actually just stopped seeing or communicating with, and I haven't missed her at all.
Cheryl, that is an interesting thing that you said about how to free yourself from toxic people. And you started out by saying, think of all the people who have been toxic to you in your life. And as I thought about your words, I realized that some of the people in my life who were toxic were people who had positions of power over me. The first person I thought of was a very mean teacher that I had in the second grade. And she would always have just a mean, snide way of making me feel like I was not even a good person. Forget about being a good student. She would name other students' grades out loud. She would say, Velma Jean, A, uh, Susie Smith, E, Barbara Charles, U, for you unsatisfactory. And she would say it in such a mean way. Now, this is somebody that I had for a whole semester. I could not have gotten away from her. So uh, I could complain to mama about her attitude, but really, she was a toxic person. As far as friends who are toxic people, you are right. You can realize they're not good for you. you can ghost them, you can move away, you can change neighborhoods. Those are all kinds of things you can do as an adult. I actually had a job position where a couple of my bosses were toxic. They always had to have some kind of, and this was before, women had rights to stand up against sexual harassment. But these young men were the kind of men who would make some kind of nasty sexual comment in your presence. It wasn't even to you or to me, but it would be said so that I could hear it. Those were
Yes.
toxic people. And that didn't change until I left that job and went somewhere else. What's been your experience, Naima?
Ooh, well, this is quite timely for me because I have had some toxic friends that I have had to simply eliminate from my presence. And when you were talking, Cheryl, about how when you're around somebody and then you feel like you realize you feel bad afterwards, and if you tell them some good news, you won an award or got some kind of recognition, they would belittle it in some kind of way. And I realize, and of course, a lot of us, like you said, we have frenemies, people who are around us and they act like they admire us and they act like they're our friends, but they say little things to diminish everything we're doing. And what that really is, it really is jealousy. It's resentment, and they might admire you, but it's the flip side of admiration where it comes down to jealousy and resentment because they don't feel good about themselves. They can't really honestly feel good about anything that you do, any of your achievements. So they do little things to cut you down, and they might know a little enough about you to know where your insecurities might be.
Right.
So they're able to play on that. And so I've eliminated people from my life who I realized were frenemies. And unfortunately, there isn't any way to change that behavior. They're doing that because of, and if you call them on it, they'll act like, it's your imagination. Or
they will turn the tables on you and make like it's your fault.
Yeah. So, and it's really hard if it's somebody that is in any kind of position of authority, like if you're working a job, if it's a supervisor or anything, that's the worst position to be in, because those kind of people, that becomes so emotionally abusive. And I know a lot of people who've held on to jobs that they hated because they had to endure that kind of treatment. I'm glad I've never been in that position, but I have had people that I may have depended on for certain things, and they were people who were mean in an underhanded way, and they would say things that were hurtful, or if they knew I was going through something difficult, a relationship breakup or something, they would say things that were hurtful in a way that let me know they were enjoying my pain.
Right.
And so
what kind of advice would you have for like one of your own children or your grown people? Because sometimes as teenagers, as I think back even further, my toxic people were some of the ones, like you said, Cheryl, frenemies. They were teens that I hung out with, but if there was somebody available to get picked on, I was the one.
Yes. And that's what I want to switch to, because, as grown women, we know that you can say all kind of words and let these people know, you know what? You have no power over me. It's like Glenda, you have no power here. Be gone. But
Right.
but when your child is dealing with that, and that can be from anywhere from, little ones who, when they don't get invited to a birthday party or something else, something that excludes them or makes them feel bad, you don't want to step in and try to monitor everything, because you're not going to keep your kid in a bubble to where they're never going to be hurt. But you can step in and say, you know what? Let's do something fun that day. Let's go out, let's go to a park, let's go to the zoo. Let's have a special day just for us. And then we don't have to worry about that. And they're still going to be hurt, and your kids are always going to, they're going to get their feelings hurt. But and a lot of times when kids really like someone, I remember when Sarah was in preschool, and these girls that she really liked, they were a little bit older, like say they were a year or two older, but she wanted to hang around with them. And they didn't really want her around. Now, there were kids that were her age, and the teacher was trying to, move her closer to those girls who were her age, but there wasn't anything she could do. And sometimes they kind of have to learn for themselves that, maybe you should have a play date with Melanie instead of with, Desiree or whatever it is. And then maybe you can kind of subtly cultivate that, talk to the parents when they get older and they're in grade school, and you see that, they want to be the butt of the jokes all the time because they want to be with the popular kids, even if the popular kids are the mean girls or boys. Sometimes you have to step in and subtly say, that person doesn't make you feel good about yourself. Let's think about some other things that you can do, some sports you can get into, or something else that can kind of make you go in a different direction. And it doesn't always work. Like I said, you're not going to keep your kids in a bubble, but they need to learn. And as they get older, they start to learn, I don't feel good about this person, and I don't need to be around them, so that you don't have to wait until their frontal lobe develops at 25 years old before they realize that because it takes that long before they realize, this person isn't good for me. Every time I go to their place, something bad happens to me, or or they make me feel bad, or everybody ends up making fun of me, whatever, yet they keep going back hoping that things will change. And I hope that we can start to think about how to give our kids a little bit more tools so that they feel good about themselves. A lot of times they'll say, well, they're right, I am too fat, or I am too skinny, or I am too this. And you say, you know what?
You're just fine. You're perfect the way you are.
You're perfect just the way you are. God does not make mistakes. And you let them know that, one, you love them, and sometimes that's not enough. Yeah. But, you also say, let's do something that you like to do, and help cultivate them so that they start to feel good about themselves. And the more they feel good about themselves, the less the toxic people have influence over.
Well, that's a key thing.
That's really important too, is to help train your children how to recognize good character. If they are drawn to people who they notice they are mean to someone or bullying to someone, and you're part of that group, because it just is going to go around. It'll be your turn for everyone to pick on you one day. And so you don't even want to be with those people. I think sometimes it takes getting into a little bit of trouble. I will say this, that my youngest daughter, when she was like a freshman in high school or something, she and her friends got into trouble by dancing on the roof of their grammar school because the gates were open. It was under construction, and it said no trespassing. Well, they all went anyway, took their boom box, was dancing, and that was all fun and hilarious until the alarm went off, and all those people took off. My daughter and one friend was caught, and they spent a night in jail. And when they had to go before the judge, luckily the judge was one of my husband's friends in their Bible study. He said, I'll look in on her case. And he actually talked to my daughter about the kind of friends that she had chosen. These people, look how they ran off when the cops came and left you holding the bag like you're the only one. These people do not care about you. If they were your real friends, they would have stayed there and said, we all going to jail together or something like that. But these people are heading in a direction you don't want to go change your friends.
Well, that's the thing. When you choose your friends, and then in order to be accepted by those friends, you have to do some things that really are against your better judgment. That should tell you something. But a lot of times, our children might make those decisions because, like you say, they want to be part of the popular group or whatever the case may be. And sometimes being part of that popular group means making fun of the child who's different, the one who's maybe a little chubby or not considered attractive. And if they have not developed the character where they have standards and it's more important for them to fit in, then they could easily be steered in that direction. And sometimes it is a challenge to help them see this is not who you want to be. This is not what you want to associate with. These people are mean. These people do risky behavior. These people get in trouble and they think it's fun. You don't want to be a part of that, because later on in life you're gonna see the consequences of that. And sometimes it's hard when they're teenagers or they're preteens or they're in that stage where they're not making good decisions.
They're still figuring things out.
But if you've been through it, sometimes you can give them a real life example of things. I know that, I went through a stage where, I had to deal with bullying and things like that. And there was this group of girls, and you're going to read about it in Growing Up.
You're just writing a tell-all book, aren't you?
And the thing about it, because, everybody, we're all grown now. You're not the people that you were, but you are responsible for what you've done whenever you've done it, even if you were a child.
Yes.
So this group of girls, it was 6 of them. One of them, she was a nice girl, but she was afraid of not being popular if she didn't hang with the mean girls. And so one time me and her were walking home together from school, and she said, "Don't tell anybody that I walked home with you, because I don't want them to be mad at me." And I thought about that, and I realized, you sure are cowardly. You don't even have the courage to stand up for me as a friend. But I just understood that that's where she was at. She wasn't strong enough to stand with me and be my friend, because she was worried about being the one that would be picked on if she didn't hang with the mean girl.
Would be next, and she would be next.
So
and also,
you got to really teach your children an inner sense of what would you call it? I guess
preservation,
character, standards, values that are beyond public opinion, because they're going to need that. They're going to need to be able to stand. Sometimes you have to stand alone, but you have to stand firm for something of value, your own integrity. I think that's the word, integrity. And sometimes it takes a while to learn that, but you have to teach that, because there are going to be those times where you have the people who are mean and the people who are sincere. And you have to decide, do I want to be with the popular ones who are mean, or do I want to be a sincere person that wouldn't harm anybody?
Also, parents, in order for you to teach, you have to model. We all know, we've had kids, so we all know that you hear, and we've all been kids, so you know that you hear everything that goes on in your house. Yes. When you were a kid, when your parents were saying stuff, in fact, if they didn't want you to hear it, they acted like they were talking right at you, because then you weren't paying attention. But kids hear everything. So if they hear you talking about someone, oh, she needs to sit her fat butt down, or or if they hear you gossiping and saying really mean things to people, that's what they're learning. They're learning that
mimic that behavior.
They are. So if that is what is going on, you can't turn around and say, well, you shouldn't be like this, because even if they don't say it out loud, they say, well, you do that. You, as soon as so-and-so leaves, you're all friendly to them, but as soon as they leave, then all of a sudden you're talking about them behind their back. So we have to really model that behavior.
That's true
for our kids.
That's true. They do watch. They do see.
And if you stand up when you see someone being bullied, or you stand up and you see something and you are with your kids, they will see that too. They will see where you will stand up for the little guy. They will see what, and we're not saying that it's always safe to do that. But if you see somebody at, like, say it's a cashier, and you see somebody bullying the cashier or acting ugly or something, and you don't step in or say something, or at least whisper to your kid if it's dangerous, this is not how nice people act. Depending on their age, this is not how nice people treat each other, because there's so much meanness right now, and we're in
Yes.
a political climate where that is being celebrated. And so we need to stop the toxicity that is outside our house, inside our house, and in our neighborhoods and in our friend groups. And we
Right.
need to free ourselves from those people and say, you know what? I can't be your friend anymore because you're not a nice person.
Sometimes, that, and usually people don't say it, they just stop calling, and they,
Yes.
and they delete your number from their phone, because
Yes.
that's what you
And
do when,
the block is good.
yeah, when you have had it with people. And I've had to do that because I realized these were not people that really, really liked me. They put on a face that they did, but
Yes.
then they said things that were unkind behind my back, and they said snide things that hurt my feelings to my face. They said things in our group of people that would be denigrating and hurtful. And so I realized that this was a frenemy, and
Mm-hmm.
I removed myself from their company permanently. And sometimes that's what you have to do. And, you feel bad that there isn't any way you could say to them, you did this, because you know that, first of all, I think I did confront them and they denied it. So I realized there isn't any other recourse. They're never going to admit that they're doing what they're doing. So I need to make a choice to not experience it anymore. And, I've had to make those choices with some people who were not kind, and just say, I'm choosing not to experience that behavior from you anymore. And I,
And it's
One of the things that John Perkins said in his book, Let Justice Roll Down, he talked about how we as a people have made hate a value. I
yes,
mean, remember as little kids, we used to do this thing called signifying, where somebody would say something really smarty to you and you had to up them by saying something smarty back. And that kind of toxic behavior actually can carry on into adulthood. We
oh, yeah.
become more sophisticated in how we do it. But what kind of heart does a person have where they feel like they have to denigrate someone else who is supposed to be their friend? Like you said, Naima, it stems from jealousy. And you have to extricate yourself from those kind of people, because that kind of behavior will rub off on you. You will find yourself acting that way and you don't even mean to, but you've become them.
That's the thing. If you get into a signifying contest with somebody, you have to be increasingly more cruel in order to win. You have to say more hurtful things than what they've said to you. So, do you really want to be that kind of person?
I
Yeah,
know
you
that's
can
the
fight with
epitome.
words, but what do you have to say in order to up the next person? And how do you feel about having said something that cruel? So, is it worth it to win that kind of verbal battle?
and sometimes it's hard because sometimes the call is coming from inside the house. Sometimes it is family, and it can
Mm.
be parents who can be toxic. It can be
Oh,
siblings
that's
who can
hard.
be toxic. It can be cousins. It can be all kinds of people who you can't necessarily walk away and disengage from. But you can, after you say, you know what, that hurt my feelings. And I really don't want to put up with this anymore. And then do it. There are billions and billions of people on this planet. You don't have to waste your time with anybody who is making it their life's choice to make you feel bad about yourself because they don't feel good about themselves.
Because that's
So,
what it
you know,
is.
and you can teach your children the same way. You know, when people talk about the loneliness epidemic, sometimes you're lonely because of yourself. If people are always leaving you or not calling you back or something, and you're the common denominator, look at yourself. Are you that toxic person? Are you
Ooh.
always have to say something that you think is witty, but trying to cut somebody down? The
Mm.
one who's, signifying first? Are you the one,
You're the signifying monkey.
everybody's laughing except for the person that you were talking about? You know, Notice if you're the toxic person and if people are freeing themselves from you.
Think about it. That's right. That's absolutely right. Because and you mentioned family. Parents need to pay attention when children are teasing each other. Yeah, children will be children, but it's so easy to allow the
Meanness.
teasing to get to the point of cruelty. And as parents, you can't just turn a blind eye. You
Right.
have to step in and not allow that. It's so easy if you notice one child is always the butt of jokes, or yeah, children are going to play around and do little silly things, but you can observe if there's a certain pattern of bullying, and you have
Subtle bullying.
yes, you have to really step in and tell your children, you don't treat your brother that way, you don't treat your sister that way, you don't say those kind of things. Like you say, nice people don't treat each other that way. It has to the standards have to be set in the home where you don't allow that kind of behavior. And like you say, you have to exemplify it. You can't be all nasty and mean and cruel to your children verbally and then expect them to talk nicely to each other. You have to actually model the behavior. But it takes practice, because sometimes people were treated that way growing up. So if this is what you experienced, you're going to think that's normal behavior, but it really isn't. And sometimes you got to change the whole atmosphere in the household and do something different, do something other than what you might have experienced growing up. Because like you say, if it made you feel bad, do you want to make your child feel bad? Do you want them to feel worthless? Do you want them to feel unloved? Do you want them to feel like a failure? Do you want to feel the way you were made to feel? So we have to remember how we felt when someone said something ugly and hurtful, even if it came from a parent or an elder, and not do that to our children. Yes. So, well, for those who have children, more than one, you may want to observe patterns of behavior. Make sure there's no bullying. Make sure there's kind speech. Limit the teasing, because and if you have a child, and I was a crier, very sensitive.
Me too. Cry baby.
If you have a child that's crying, pay attention to that. Don't let them just keep getting their feelings, or toughen up. No, try to care about their feelings, because their feelings do matter. And if you want them to care about others' feelings, show that their feelings matter, and set the example of how to talk to people by how you talk to your own children.
Right.
Yes. Well, we've got to go. It's that time. Make sure you like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that bell icon so you can be notified every time we go live. We're live at 5 on Sundays, 6 Eastern time, 5 Central time. And wherever you are in the world, just adjust your time to that time, and you can join us live. And if you miss it, you can see it in the archives on our
YouTube
channel and Facebook page. And next time,
I'm Cheryl.
I'm Barbara. We are 3 Black moms. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.